The cold morning air cut through the narrow street in Austin, Texas, where the smell of frying dough and brewed coffee clung to a tired food truck like a fragile promise of survival, and standing inside it was a young woman whose life had taught her to expect nothing and endure everything. Hannah Carter had learned long ago how invisible poverty could make a person, how people's eyes slid past her grease-stained apron and worn sneakers as if she were part of the pavement itself. That morning, as a line formed outside her truck and the city slowly woke up, she had no idea that a single moment would soon tear open old memories and quietly rewrite the future she had stopped believing in. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that can happen when we least expect them, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this remind us that no one is ever truly invisible. Hannah's food truck was more than a business. It was a lifeline balanced on thin margins and hope held together by duct tape and faith. She woke before dawn every day, hands aching from scrubbing and cooking, heart heavy with the responsibility of keeping herself afloat after years of setbacks that never made the news. She had grown up in a foster system that taught her independence too early and trust too cautiously, and by the time she reached adulthood, she had learned to survive without expecting rescue. The truck had once belonged to her late uncle, a man named Robert Carter, whose belief in honest work and second chances had shaped her more than he ever knew. When he passed, he left her the truck and a debt that seemed almost cruel, but Hannah took both as her inheritance, choosing effort over despair. That morning, the line moved slowly, made up of office workers, delivery drivers, and tourists chasing something authentic. Hannah focused on her routine, keeping her eyes down, counting change, listening to orders blur together. She barely noticed the man who stepped forward near the end of the line, dressed simply, standing with a posture that suggested confidence worn lightly rather than loudly. To her, he was just another customer, another transaction in a day full of them. What she did not see was the way his eyes lingered, studying her face with a recognition that stirred something deep and unresolved. Years earlier, Hannah's life had taken a different shape in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio, where she had briefly allowed herself to dream. Back then, she had been younger, softer, and more willing to believe that people stayed. She had worked evenings at a local diner while attending community college, and there she had met a quiet, determined young man named Matthew Reynolds, someone who spoke with ambition but lived humbly. Their lives had intersected during a season when hope felt possible, but life, as it often does, had pulled them apart before promises could settle into permanence. Hannah had left town after a sudden tragedy, carrying guilt and unfinished words with her, never looking back because it hurt too much to do so. Standing at her food truck years later, Hannah felt a strange tension in the air as the man reached the window. She handed over his order with practiced politeness, unaware that her name, printed faintly on a faded badge, struck him harder than any headline ever could. Matthew Reynolds had gone on to build a company that now dominated national business news, his rise labeled inspirational by people who never knew the cost. Despite the wealth and recognition, there were moments when his past surfaced uninvited, especially the memory of a girl who had vanished without explanation, leaving behind questions that never fully healed. Matthew's presence stirred something in Hannah she could not immediately name, a sense of familiarity mixed with discomfort. She dismissed it, telling herself exhaustion played tricks on the mind, but when he leaned closer and spoke her name softly, the world seemed to tilt. The realization landed not with drama but with a quiet ache, as memories rushed back of shared laughter, late-night conversations, and dreams spoken too early to survive reality. Hannah's instinct was to retreat, to shield herself from the vulnerability she had buried under years of hard work, but Matthew did not push or demand recognition. He simply looked at her with a mixture of respect and regret, as if acknowledging the distance life had carved between them. In the days that followed, Matthew returned, not as a savior or spectacle, but as someone trying to understand the woman Hannah had become. He saw the resilience in her tired eyes, the dignity in her struggle, and the pride she took in earning every dollar. Hannah, in turn, began to see that success had not erased the humility in him, nor the kindness that once made her feel safe. Their reconnection was slow and careful, shaped by honesty rather than fantasy, and through it, Hannah discovered that being seen did not have to mean being rescued. What changed was not Hannah's work ethic or independence, but her belief that her past did not disqualify her from a future filled with possibility. Matthew offered support without control, respect without conditions, and through that, Hannah found the courage to expand her business, to believe that her food truck could become something lasting. More importantly, she learned that her worth had never been measured by how much money she had or how invisible she felt to strangers in line. Before we reach the end, leave a comment sharing where you're watching from and whether you believe people can reconnect after years apart, because your stories matter here. As Hannah stood one evening watching the sun dip behind the Austin skyline, she realized that life had not rewarded her for being strong, but it had honored her persistence. Matthew's presence did not erase the hardships she endured, but it reminded her that some connections survive distance, silence, and time. If this story touched your heart, made you reflect on kindness or second chances, please like, share, and engage with this video, because your support helps stories like Hannah's reach others who may need hope today. And as the food truck lights flickered on and another line formed, Hannah smiled quietly, knowing she was no longer invisible, not because someone rich had noticed her, but because she had finally seen herself.